Want to start the show off tonight with a moment of silence and honor and respect. A police officer who lost his life in Colorado, Eric Talley. So a moment of quiet, silence. His life mattered. Blue lives matter. All lives matter. But we have to put all this into context. Our law enforcement officers get up every day to go out, to protect, and to serve. They have families, and they're part of a family. They're someone's husband, someone's wife, someone's son, father, sister, brother, uncle, or aunt. They never know when they walk out that door if they're going to be returning home. Some say that it's a thankless job. But let's think about it. Who would put their life on the line? They don't run from danger, they run to danger. They don't always get it right. They're not perfect. No one is perfect. But yet and still, they're out there to protect and to serve. And they deserve respect. With any profession, you have a few bad apples, but you can't sum them all up as being bad. We've got to do better. We have to do better. Defining the police for what doesn't make any sense. The same people who are saying defund the police will call the police when they encounter trouble or problems. We've got to respect our men and women in blue. Again, thank you for joining me tonight, After Dark with Rob and Andrew. We have a special guest, NYC, New York City mayoral candidate, Bill Pepitone, will be joining us for the next 30 minutes. He'll take your questions, he'll answer our questions, and he will tell us what his plans are for New York City, because we know that New York City is not the New York City that it used to be. So without further ado, my co-host at Small Town Andrew. Andrew, how's it going?
It's going well, Rob.
And my panel, journalist Heather Robinson. Heather, how's it going?
It's great, Rob. Thank you.
And attorney Manny Alejandro. How's it going, Manny?
Great. Good to see you.
And our guest, Bill Pepitone. How's it going, Bill?
Very good. Good evening, everybody.
Well, Bill, we're just going to jump right into it because I'm sure that there are a lot of questions that I want to ask. I'm sure our panel and there are other people that are joining us online. So, Bill, just to start off with, what do you think is happening in New York City, first of all? And feel free to give your opening statement before answering.
Okay, I'll give you a quick opening statement. My name is Bill Pepitone. I am a candidate for New York City mayor, a retired New York City police officer. I come from a family that has served the city and the country for decades. My grandfather was in the United States Navy in World War II. My father was a New York City police officer and New York City firefighter for 27 years. And my uncle was a New York City detective. I also have family that is in law enforcement right now. I decided to run for mayor because I'm disgusted by what we've witnessed over the past year and the direction we're going. So I decided to enter the race because of my experience, my skill set, a lot of different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
What's going on with New York City right now is just a complete failure of leadership. We have a mayor in City Hall whose sole agenda has been to shove his radical social agenda down every New Yorker's throat and remake New York City in the image he wanted and change New York City and change the fabric and the culture of New York City.
Mm-hmm.
And it's been a colossal failure on every single level.
Do you know de Blasio personally?
I do not. Fortunately, I've never had the opportunity to meet him. I don't want to meet him. I have no desire to meet Mr. de Blasio.
What would be one of the first things you would do if you were elected mayor?
Well, for me, it begins and ends with public safety. I truly believe public safety is the building block for our overall recovery. We have to restore the morale of the NYPD. You cannot survive. A major city cannot survive with a demoralized law enforcement agency. And that's what we have right now. And I'm the only candidate who could walk in the door on day one into City Hall and immediately restore the morale of the NYPD. Once we get past that and we go back to proactive policing, policing that addresses low-level offenses, quality of life offenses, we can turn the city around quickly. But that's got to be step one.
Right. Definitely the crime levels are up in New York City.
Yes.
What would you do about that? What do you think? What did de Blasio do to stop this?
Well, it started at the very beginning of his administration. He turned his back on quality of life offenses. If you go back to the early 90s, under Mayor Dinkins' administration, homicides were at a record rate. The city was full of violence and gunfire. Mayor Giuliani stepped in, and one of his first acts as mayor was to attack quality of life offenses, low-level offenses that, if ignored, act as a gateway to more violent crimes. And it worked. It worked 100%. It turned the city around. It transformed the city. It brought tourism back. Our economy boomed. The streets were safe. Our subways were safe. We have to go back to that mentality, that type of policing where fare evasion is not ignored, public intoxication, public lewdness, vandalism, the homeless crisis. We have to start worrying about our quality of life, our citizens' quality of life, and that's step one.
Right. Now, some people say that under Giuliani that there was definitely, it seemed, the police were hard on blacks. What would you say about that? Because as the mayor, that's one of the first things you're going to deal with. You would have a lot on the left saying, oh my gosh, they're picking at blacks. What are your thoughts about that?
Well, it's about communication. And I think we lost a little bit of communication back then. We really need community leaders, legitimate community leaders who are concerned about their constituents and their neighbors, not about throwing gasoline on the fire and being racial arsonists. We need legitimate community leaders who are willing to sit down with top police executives and the mayor and put everybody in one room, sit down and have an open discussion face to face. It can't be about political rhetoric. It can't be about painting the streets. It's got to be about coming together, because the police can't survive without the community, and the community certainly can't survive without the police. We have to bring them together. The only way to do that is face-to-face conversation.
Now, under Giuliani, I mean, one of the things that he said, and I mean, when you look at the numbers, I mean, it was somewhat proven true, is that a lot of the crime takes place in poor neighborhoods. And unfortunately, those poor neighborhoods are black neighborhoods. So what would you say to the black community?
Well, I think if you look at the stats and the numbers, since they quote unquote defunded the police, and this mayor has had such a negative effect on the police that they're afraid to do their jobs, most of the violence is taking place in our minority communities. And they're suffering. They're suffering because of the lack of aggressive policing. They're suffering because the police have taken that step back. So if we go back to proactive policing, it's going to save lives in minority neighborhoods. It's just a fact, and those numbers show it. That's where the spike in violence has been, because the police have had to take a step back because of the legislation, the ludicrous legislation put forth by the city council, spurred on by this mayor. The minority communities that I've been in since I started campaigning, they want the police. They're against the defunding of the police. They want to see more police on the streets. They want to see more police officers on foot, walking their neighborhoods. They want the police. It's the politicians who kneeled before these anarchist groups and gave in to them. And they've hurt the minority communities. They've done nothing for the minority communities.
How would you handle Black Lives Matter?
Interesting. I believe when Black Lives Matter started, but when the movement, quote unquote, movement started, they had a legitimate message, a legitimate complaint after what we saw in Minneapolis. I mean, nobody can justify that. So they had a legitimate message, but when it turned to violence, their message was lost. If their leaders are willing to condemn the violence and end the violence and take responsibility for the violence, then there's a chance we can have a conversation. We could sit down at the table and talk about our problems and our issues and try to come together. But until they condemn the violence and end the violence, then there's nothing to talk about.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say about again, there's the uptick in crime is all over, but apparently there seems to be an uptick in crime against Asian Americans. What are your thoughts on that?
I think there's a lot of reasons for that. I think overall, it's just that crime in general is skyrocketing. There's just a feeling of anarchy on our streets. The city has become lawless, and it's given a free ticket to anyone to commit all kinds of violent acts. What's happening against our Asian Americans right now is disgraceful. What's happened in our subways recently, with people being thrown in front of subway trains, is disgraceful. It's happening in every neighborhood, in every community, and any attack against anyone because of their race, religion, color, creed is an attack on American society. And we need to end violence against every community, against every person.
Right. So my other panel, do you guys have any questions for Bill Pepitone?
Well, hi, Bill. You sound so reasonable. And as a New Yorker, I really would love to see someone like you become mayor. I feel like from what I've studied, it was all but miraculous that Rudy Giuliani got elected when he did, and it really was due to the borough of Staten Island. I guess I'm just wondering about your strategy for mobilizing every voter that you can. I'm sure you know what you're up against, unfortunately, and what can we do? What can we do to help you get everybody who's got common sense and wants safety, get them to the polls?
It's really about spreading the word and talking about it, using social media as a tool. That's so important. We can get people to realize that it's about common sense. It's not about radical agendas on either side, left or right. It's about common sense government. We've lost common sense in our government at the city level and certainly at the state level. We have to get people on board who just believe that they have a right to feel safe. They have a right to open a business and earn a living. They have a right to send their children to school without being vaccinated or tested. Children need to be in schools and get a legitimate and fair education. Those are the people we're going to appeal to. So to get them to the polls, because we have a major problem here in New York City with getting people to the polls, that's why we got a second term out of Mayor de Blasio. It's just about spreading the word. It's about being out there. It's about being in every community, talking to people, listening to people, and using every tool, every resource available to us to reach people, whether that be social media, or whether that be face-to-face events, in-person events. Now the venues are opening up. We have to use every tool and every resource we can to reach people.
Bill, how would you work with Governor Cuomo?
Well, I would sit down with the governor and we would have this conversation. First of all, it's a clean slate. The relationship he had with Bill de Blasio would be over at that point. He would know, and I would make the governor understand that I represent the city of New York and every person in the city of New York. And without a flourishing city of New York, there is no New York State. This New York State needs New York City to thrive. It needs New York City to be what it used to be, or else the state itself will collapse. So Governor Cuomo's success depends on New York City's success. And that would be my message. And my message would also be, like I said, I represent every New Yorker and I will stand up and fight for every New Yorker. I won't roll over or lay down for the governor. He's going to understand that very quickly.
Hey, Bill, it's Manny. How you doing? Thanks for joining.
Thank you, man.
Appreciate it. So kind of where are you right now? The Republicans, I was a candidate for public advocate. The Republicans in New York, Rob and I and Andrew go back and forth on this all the time. I mean, we are more divided than united, let's say,
Yes.
in terms of, we have so few of us, but yet we can't seem to get behind the right candidates. So where are you right now with the Republican Party? I understand you got the nomination from the Conservative Party, so you automatically be on the ballot in
Yes.
November, regardless. So you're a candidate for Republican primary, I guess, in June, and then when's the Republican primary?
The Republican primary is in June, but I am going to forego the primary. As the Conservative Party candidate endorsed by the Conservative Party, I will be on the ballot in November. We made a decision to forego the primary. We think it'll be a bit of a circus and a very expensive circus. And that gives us more time to get our message out, to build our fundraising, to reach more people. It'll give us a full 7 months to get every New Yorker on board and to get our message out without getting tied up in what's going to be a political circus in the primaries in June. So we're going to avoid that mess and concentrate on our message.
Good. Glad to hear that. So what do you think about what's going on with Andrew Cuomo? I mean, when you have one-sided government, and I do this show often, I always like to kind of draw comparisons. And I said, look, if the allegations that are levied against Andrew Cuomo were levied against Donald Trump, he would have had to resign immediately. Now there's 8 women who've made allegations that are very sincere. They have a lot of people behind them in terms of their testimony and their statements. They clearly should be believed and heard. The nursing home crisis, 15,000 people have died in these nursing home and rehabilitation centers. And now it seems like the Democrats are going to slow walk this impeachment, which I heard today in the news. So it's going to take months. What's your feel about this? And what do you think happened with Cuomo? Do you think there's veracity to these allegations? And what do you think should happen to him ultimately?
I think there comes a point where a elected official or any leader, when the story is more about them than about the people, then it's time to step aside, because you're doing your people, your city, your state, whoever you represent, you're doing them a disservice. Right now, every time the governor speaks, it's about the allegations and it's about the nursing homes. It makes it impossible for him to govern fully. So he should do the right thing by the people who elected him, and even those who didn't, and step down. There are just too many allegations. There are too many distractions. It has made his administration unable to act and unable to govern. There is no faith in our government right now, in the city or the state. And the allegations are horrendous. If proven true, then he's going to have a major legal problem on his hands. But when you look at what happened with the deaths in the nursing homes, the fact that they covered it up, that's absolutely horrendous. And it's up to our legislators, it's up to our government to really push the impeachment process to, at nothing else, find out what exactly happened. And if he's guilty, then he should be removed. As you said, President Trump would have been removed. And so we need to find out the truth. But again, once the story is about you more than it's about the people, it's time to step aside.
Mm-hmm. So, Bill, let me just see something that Manny just brought up. I want to be clear on. So you're not running under the Republican umbrella, but the conservative umbrella. Is that correct?
That is correct. The Republican, the 5 boroughs of the Republican Party endorsed 2 other people. They're kind of split. So the Conservative Party has been behind me since day one. They've treated me with respect since day one. They've believed in me. They've believed in my message. I owe them so much. I'm here because of the Conservative Party. Mm-hmm. So I'm proud to be their candidate, and I'm honored to be their candidate.
Well, I've got to be honest with you. I don't even know who's running on the under the Republican banner. So as
Brooklyn and Staten Island in
the city, in my opinion, the Republicans here in the city, they seem to be still split. I'm sorry, go ahead, Bill.
Yeah, they are split. No, that's okay. They are split. And the Republicans are split between Curtis Sliwa, who people know from the Guardian Angels and from his radio show.
Okay.
Yes. And Fernando Mateo, who was an advocate for the Taxi and Limousine Commission for many years.
Mm-hmm. So what are you going to do to get your name out there, so that people will see that you are a serious contender? If they don't see you doing the primaries, people will think, okay, he's a no-show, he's not serious. What can you tell our listeners right now, our viewers, that you will do for New York City?
Well, we're going to rebuild New York City again. Step 1 is public safety. We're going to take back our streets, make our streets safe, make our mass transit safe, and everything will just follow after that. Once we restore the NYPD, once we take back our streets, businesses will come back. The businesses we have, we'll keep them here. We have to go back to 5 days a week in school, in our classrooms for our children. Back to a fair and legitimate grading system, testing for specialized high schools, special needs programs, which is so close to my heart and to my family, gifted and talented. We have to raise the bar on education, because right now our education system is on the brink of complete and total collapse. What they're doing to our children for the last 2 years has been abominable, and there's no end in sight until we elect a new mayor. So I'm going to bring back public safety. We're going to get our businesses rolling, boost our economy. We're going to get our education system back on track. A homeless crisis we have to address immediately and get out of that vicious cycle of just putting people in shelters and in hotels and walking away from them. We're going to have to be proactive and start addressing the causes of homelessness and help people before they're displaced, and then get them into permanent housing with counseling. The mental illness crisis on our streets and in our subways. There's far too many people suffering from mental illness that are on our streets and committing violent acts. We have to protect everyone. And that's really been the focus of my campaign. And what separates me from so many others, I actually care about protecting people. I did it for 20 years as a New York City police officer. My family has done it as far back as 1973. That's what I'm about. And everything just rolls off of public safety.
Right. Now, a couple more things I have here. I'm going to get your thoughts on charter schools. Where do you stand on charter schools? Where do you stand on the no bonds law, or whatever it was that de Blasio passed back in 2020? And you mentioned the homeless crisis. Like right now, they're displacing them into neighborhoods where there are children, which to me isn't the best thing to do. Okay, de Blasio also wants to shut down, he or Cuomo wants to shut down Rikers Island. So again, the first one, where do you stand? Where do you stand on charter schools, the no bond policy, and you talk about public safety, the homeless crisis? So go for it. Charter schools.
Okay, charter schools, number one. I am a strong supporter of charter schools. I think parents deserve a choice, especially if we've lived through COVID, where the way our education system is. Parents deserve a choice. Our children deserve an opportunity. So I am a strong supporter of charter schools. Number two, I believe, was bail reform.
Yes.
Bail reform passed by the state. Governor Cuomo pushed it. Mayor de Blasio pushed it. I'm against it. I think it's led and been a major reason why we've had so much crime on our streets. We have recidivists back on our streets within hours of committing crimes, violent crimes. We saw last June during the riots that people were being arrested for attacking police officers and burning down buildings. We're back on the street 4 or 5 hours later doing the same exact thing. So that's a failure, and I'm absolutely against that. And what was number three?
Homeless crisis.
Homeless crisis, yes. As I said before, it can't be about shelters, putting people in shelters, in hotels, and walking away from them. We have to be proactive, address the causes of homelessness, whether it be mental illness, drug or alcohol addiction, COVID, people losing their jobs and losing their homes and because they can't pay their rents or their mortgages. Counselors, we have to put counselors in place, supportive housing, where we have counselors help our homeless people, our less fortunate, get back on their feet and assimilate them back into society. A shelter is not a place to live for 10, 15 years. It's about getting them back on their feet, assimilating them back into society.
Another question just came out. How do you plan on accomplishing all this by you yourself? How will you galvanize the support? Because New York is completely fractured. You have people that are jockeying for different positions. I think this whole Cuomo thing is that someone sees a lane that they can jump into, Letitia James. So how are you going to galvanize this big city? Yes, Giuliani was able to do it. He was tough as nails. Are you that tough as nails guy to galvanize the community?
I'm actually.
This is a way we do it. Go ahead.
Yes.
Go ahead, Bill.
I'm actually tougher than Mayor Giuliani. Just kidding. Mayor Giuliani is one of my. Obviously, I have the greatest respect in the world for Mayor Giuliani and what he did. You have to be tough as nails. You cannot run New York City and be weak like the mayor we've had for the past 7+ years. We're going to galvanize people by protecting them, keeping them safe, rebuilding our economy, and making New York City what it used to be, the greatest city in the world. It is still the greatest city in the world, but we're going through a downtime right now because of poor leadership. We can rebuild it quickly. We can get people on board. It's about our message. It's about standing up and taking accountability for my actions as mayor and for everyone's actions. We can do this. The message has to be strong. The message has to be loud. And it's been that way for me since day one.
This election, to me, is every election, everybody says, is the most important election of your lifetime, whatever. But truly, this is the most consequential election, okay? So I worked on Wall Street, around Wall Street for 30 years. I mentioned I was a candidate, pretty involved. I kind of have an idea what's going on, have my finger on the pulse. The people in New York City who are paying the highest proportion of taxes are running out of New York so quickly, going to Florida, maybe stopping off on the way to Georgia, going to Tennessee. So the tax base is eroding while government spending keeps going up. You mentioned the police, all these government services, people have become more needy because people haven't worked for COVID. They're on more people on unemployment, and people need testing and all the medical services. How do we stop the bleeding? New York has taxitis. I was on a Zoom call the other night with Will Barkley, the minority leader in the assembly, and he was talking about, all New York ever does, New York State and New York City, is just tax the hell out of people, and assuming they're going to take it. A lot of these people who maybe voted for Rudy Giuliani many years ago, they either retired or they've left New York. So one, that base of support is eroding. Two, the tax base is fleeting. They're talking about having a transaction tax on Wall Street. Wall Street already said, the New York Stock Exchange said they're going to move to Texas. NASDAQ will do the same thing. How do you stop, Bill, how do you stop the hemorrhaging in terms of, we need to keep New York solvent? We're not going to get checks from the federal government. De Blasio, when asked during a press conference, sorry for the long question, de Blasio was asked, how are you going to balance the budget? And he said, with a grin on his face, I expect to get the federal government to help us. So that's how you balance your checkbook, is Daddy writes you a check and you pump it into the account. I mean, New York will be insolvent, if we keep going at this rate. How do you stop the bleeding, the spending, and the eroding tax base without increasing taxes?
Well, first off, what you said is absolutely on point. This mayoral election, we're one mayoral election away from a full recovery or total irrelevancy. That's how important this is. And I know they say that about every election, but that is so true with this mayoral election for the people of New York City. New York City is too expensive to do business with. Not only is it too expensive to live in right now, but it's too expensive to do business with. I've sat down with business owners over the past several months, and they've told me some horrendous horror stories about the taxes that they're getting hit with. The alcohol industry faces taxes that have been in place since Prohibition. That's since Al Capone, Elliot Ness days. It absolutely strangles that industry to the point where we're losing millions of dollars in tax revenue over the river into New Jersey and into Pennsylvania. We're losing that tax revenue, and it's killing us because we have to take on the rest of the burden. The building industry has been absolutely choked off by the de Blasio administration. The permit process here in New York City takes years. Something that should take a matter of weeks takes years, and has ground the building industry to almost a halt. So they're really strangling our industry through taxes and through red tape, through bureaucracy. The only way to do this is to make New York City open for business again. We have to be business friendly, whether that be tax breaks, tax incentives for our businesses, to relieve the tax burden on our citizens. We have to open up, we have to open up for business, let everybody know we're open. The permit process, we have to cut through the red tape. Taxes, the alcohol industry, every single industry that has to go through this red tape and has been taxed at 1930s rates, it's unbelievable. So again, it's about being business friendly. It's about using industry to bring New York City back. New York City is set up perfectly to go back to being the industry capital of the United States. We have highways, we have land, we have sea, we have factories. Many factories right now that have been abandoned. We can get them up and running again, and start bringing jobs back here. Jobs from entry level to executive level. Make New York City the capital of industry again, and start rebuilding the business base here in New York City. Or else everyone's going to leave. We're going to lose our good people. If we lose the stock exchange, we might as well close the doors, because New York City is finished, and we are dangerously close to doing such.
So, Bill, another question that's coming in from our viewers: how will you make it easy for good cops to report bad cops, knowing that it could be dangerous?
Well, there's a culture in the New York City Police Department that goes way, way, way back. And a lot of it is a misconception. There are a lot of great cops who are, most great cops, all great cops, are absolutely disgusted by bad cops' actions. And when you look at the numbers of criminal acts or illegal acts or just overall bad acts by police officers, that number is actually minuscule. It's microscopic. good police officers don't stand by and do nothing. That's something from back in the 60s. That doesn't happen anymore. It certainly didn't happen when I was a police officer. If you saw something that you knew was improper, was illegal, or just didn't feel right, or made you, or disgusted you, you stood up and you did something about it. And there are avenues for police officers to report other police officers. What we have to do is make sure that they're given, it's got to be a fair process, that the police officer who is being alleged of misconduct is given a fair process, and that the police officer who made the report, whether we protect his identity or whatever it may be, we have to be able to let police officers come forward if they see something illegal or they see misconduct of any kind, and protect the police officers who make the complaint while also being fair to those who are being alleged to have committed that misconduct.
Right. How do you plan on standing up to the teachers union?
The teachers union has done a tremendous disservice, not only to our children, but to their own membership. The UFT has held the city up without a gun for far too long. What they've done recently, by basically bullying this mayor into a 2-case shutdown rule, 2 cases within one building, the school completely shuts down, has taken our kids, put them in school, out of school, in school, out of school, and it's destroying our children. It's destroying them academically. It's destroying them socially. The effects of this will be felt for years to come. So somebody has to stand up to the union, and it's got to be someone who's not a politician, who doesn't need their money or doesn't need their votes. I don't want the UFT's money. I don't want their support. I want our teachers' support, our individual teachers, because they're the ones who have been put in the middle by their own union. And that's been disgraceful. But the children have suffered. And for the leadership of the UFT to just continue to play this game and to hold this mayor up and to hold this city up while our children suffer, it's a disgrace. And Michael Mulgrew is responsible for this. The UFT is responsible for this. And we need a mayor who has no ties to this union, who's willing to stand up to the UFT and tell them it's about our kids, it's about our teachers, and it's about our city. It's not about you.
Right. Now, if you're elected as mayor, you'll also be able to appoint the chancellor of the New York school system. Do you have anyone in mind?
I absolutely do. I have our next chancellor in place already. Our next chancellor under my administration is going to be someone who has been in New York school classrooms, who has been in front of New York City public school children, who know the obstacles our children face, who know the obstacles our teachers face, who understands gifted and talented programs, who prioritizes special needs programs, who really believes in fair and legitimate grading system and fair and legitimate education system, not the one-size-fits-all factory conveyor belt education system we have in place right now. New York City is going to be very proud about the chancellor that I put in place.
Okay. Now, guys, we're at the bottom of the hour, and I know that we had promised Bill that if he had to leave, that he could. But before we let him go, are there any other questions? And Bill, how are you on time? Can you stay on a little while longer, or are you getting a hard break? Okay, he's agreed to stay on a little while longer. So are there any other questions that are out there from our viewers? Please put your questions into the chat box. We'll definitely present them to Bill. But what about my panel? Do you guys have any other questions for Bill? Because I can keep going on and on and on if you guys don't have anything. I think Heather's frozen right now. Go ahead, Heather.
You're on mute.
There.
No, someone collects their thoughts. Someone just put in the question box, want to know more. What about the new chancellor? They want, if you can give them some more information. What are the views that this person might have as far as a school system as a whole? I had mentioned charter schools, but public schools, the exams that the kids have to take to go from one school to the other. I guess they want some more information about that.
Sure. The person I have in mind for our next chancellor believes in a fair and legitimate grading system, not the one-size-fits-all conveyor belt. Just move people off. You're just numbers. Let's keep moving. They believe in testing for specialized high schools. They believe in raising the bar and celebrating and rewarding those who are excelling and helping those who are struggling. They believe in special needs programs and meeting IEPs, which are not being met right now, which is illegal and immoral. They believe in our gifted and talented program. They believe in charter schools and school choice, which is great. We absolutely have to have that here in New York City. They believe in reforming the entire education system because it has failed badly. And most importantly, they believe in putting children first and they are on the same page as I. No mandatory vaccinations for children. The Board of Education should not mandate vaccinations for our children. That is a parent's choice. That is an adult's choice. It is not a governmental choice.
Now, here's another question that's out there. Will you separate the school systems by districts instead of systems wide like current?
We're going to look into a lot of different ways to improve this education system. We're going to sit down and see what's going to work best. I can tell you right now the current system is a failure. So we're going to make a lot of changes to improve the system. Whatever Mayor de Blasio and Chancellor Carranza put in place, we're going to look to overturn it because, as I said, it's been a colossal failure and done our children a great disservice.
Okay, and what is your position? What is your position on the homeless encampments in the streets? I'll just say this: it has gotten horrible. We're becoming like California. I pay taxes. A lot of other people pay taxes. And yes, they're homeless people, but I don't think they should be allowed to just go and camp out on the streets or in the subway or get on the subway and they're riding backwards and forward. If I have to pay the fare, they should have to pay the fare also. Some will say, well, you're being insensitive. No, I'm not, because this is not helping the homeless. And these are the same people who will go out and will attack. I mean, we just got to just wake up, I think, and just grow up and realize that we're doing the homeless a disservice by saying, hey, well, this is my regular neighborhood homeless guy that I'm going to give a cup of coffee to or give to during the holiday time. And then during the other days, we pretend as if though they don't exist. And then other people have to endure their wrath. It's not fair. So what are your thoughts on the encampments on the streets of New York City?
Well, it goes back to quality of life. Like you said, you're a taxpayer. You shouldn't have to walk around this. You shouldn't have to walk through it. And we're doing a disservice to our homeless people, our homeless communities. We need to get these people into permanent housing. We need to first get them into shelter so they can be protected, then give them the resources and the tools to get on their feet, get into permanent housing, and assimilate back into society. We can't leave these camps or encampments up on our streets. It's not doing anybody any good. And it's been an eyesore. It's brought down the quality of life here in the city of New York. We saw what happened after the riots last year when this mayor just allowed people to live wherever they wanted, to set up their own little communities in the streets and on the sidewalks and defecate in our parks and on our sidewalks and graffiti on our courthouses and our buildings. This isn't New York City. This isn't a civil society, and that needs to end. But you can end that and get rid of these encampments, and you could still do it with some empathy and help these people. Like I said, get them the resources and the tools they need, get them help, get them supportive housing into permanent housing. And you're really addressing two issues at once. But what we need is leadership, someone who's willing to do such.
Mm-hmm. Heather, did you have a question?
Oh, I was just asking if you were related to the great Yankee, Joe Pepitone.
You know, of all the questions I get since I started running, it's not about public safety. It's not about education. Are you related to Joe Pepitone? And yes, the answer is yes. Joe is my uncle. He's my father's brother.
Oh my gosh, I love his
Oh, there you go.
great book, Joe. You could have done us proud. He was a
There's
great.
actually a better book than that. It's called Soul of a Yankee. It's about Joe's life, set into sort of a Christmas Carol type of story, and it's written by a very famous author named Bill Pepitone. So look that up.
Really?
Soul of a Yankee on
I'll check it out.
Amazon.com.
I remember I went to, I'm a big Yankees fan. I went to some Yankee convention or something when I was a kid, and Joe was there, and the way he was, they gave his bio and introduced was with it ending. He was the first player to bring a hairdryer to the locker room. Back when guys had, the flat tops and stuff, Roger Maris and all that. I love it. I love, what a tremendous baseball player.
Listen, if you're going to be known for something, why not that?
Yeah, I mean, look, I got hair. I still have my hair. I want to make it last. Let it shine. So, what do you think, Bill, about I walk around. I'm trying to get back out there. I'm in a financial district, and the excitement is kind of gone from the city. I don't know if it's a Bill de Blasio killer in New York City. I don't know if it's a 1-2 punch between Bill de Blasio and Cuomo, being an idiot, shutting stuff down. I tell people, you believe Andrew Cuomo? He has no integrity, and he's saying that we could have 10% of people at a Yankees game without any kind of scientific proof. And I'm a lawyer. I'm not an epidemiologist, nor do I claim to be, but I think I know more than Andrew Cuomo. I think we all do. How do we bring back the spirit of New York? Kind of we're talking about Joe Pepitone and the excitement of the Yankees. And there was some kind of buzz about the city. That buzz is gone, and people are blaming COVID. I think there's more to it than that. I hope I'm wrong, but I think there's something going on that the spirit, the excitement of the city about what made us New Yorkers is gone. Bill de Blasio, I think, did a great job killing the city and killing the spirit of the city. I don't know how you feel about that, if you agree, disagree with me, but what do you think about that?
I agree 100% with you. I think it's Bill de Blasio. I think it's Governor Cuomo, and I think now it's even President Biden, with there's such negative rhetoric surrounding COVID and our recovery. How in the world can you tell me that you can only put 10% of capacity in Yankee Stadium, an open air stadium, in the summertime? There's no science to support that. There's no data to support that. I was watching a Rangers game the other night at Madison Square Garden. To have the building that empty, it's disgraceful.
What's the point? What's the point of opening up?
What's the point? Exactly. Exactly. You put people back in.
Fake.
It is fake. It is absolutely fake. And I'm not saying that the virus is fake, not by any means.
No, not at all. But I mean, it's a fake science. If you're going to say compare New York to Florida, we have higher infection rates, clearly higher morbidity rates than Florida. Florida's got more of a population. Look at Texas. So how does that work? States that are open without any masks have better statistics than New York. And look at New Jersey. New Jersey's even worse, and it's a smaller state. So the disease is real. I had COVID. It sucked. It's not a good thing to have. It's terrible. I'm not saying I'm not a conspiracy theorist here. It doesn't exist. It exists. But my point is that we got to open things up. And I feel that the city, you get to the point of no return when things are closed, like Broadway, right? Broadway makes New York, New York. Okay. Exactly. We lose $1 billion a month because Broadway's closed. Broadway's been dark since March. It'll be April next week. We've lost $12 billion. I went to the dry cleaners. I was telling these guys the other day, last week, whatever. I went to the dry cleaners for the first time in like 6 months. You look nice. You have a jacket and a tie on. When I do stuff now, I wear a hoodie. I don't wear suits anymore. If I do something virtually with a court, I'll put a tie on. But I don't even do that as much anymore because sometimes it's just on a phone call. So, people get used to, they form habits in like 28 days and they get used to living a certain life where, we're all kind of cooped up, whatever. But, the things that make New York, New York, bars, why do bars have to be closed at 11 o'clock? I mean, would you fight legally when you're elected to open stuff up? Would you work with the right lawyers in terms of, maybe doing Article 78 and just opening up this city to the fullest extent possible, obviously safely with social distancing, but we need to open up. And if we don't open up now, I think we're done. I do.
Yeah, we have to open up fully. You can do it safely. You can do it through HVAC filtration, through sanitization, through social distancing. It can be done. There's a path to doing it. Other states have done it. We have to open up our venues. We have to open up Broadway. Number one, Broadway cannot stay dark. That is the heart of New York City. That is the lifeblood of New York City. We have to get that going. If we're going to bring tourism back, we need to open Broadway. We need to open up our stadiums. We need to open up Madison Square Garden and our arenas, our movie theaters. We have to get it open. If we want to bring the city back economically, well, then we have to bring tourists back. And the only way to do that is to open up the city, to do it safely, to make our streets safer, to make Broadway safe, to make Times Square safe again like we did in the 90s. Make the city safer. If you put all these things together, we can bring New York back and do it quickly. And yes, I will fight to open up this city on day one, minute one of my administration, to open it up fully, safely, keep an eye on the data, keep an eye on the science. Like you said, the virus is real. We know that. I've had family members who have suffered through it. I know it's real, but we can't just stop living. We just simply cannot stop living. And as a city, we can't stop living. We just have to move forward. We have to.
Okay, Bill, here's another question that came from our audience. What will you do to help protect the seniors that are on a fixed income and the rents that keep going up? Have you thought about that any?
Yeah, we have to protect our seniors. Our seniors have been ignored for far too long. What the governor obviously has done with seniors is despicable. We have to start controlling more of their rents, giving them an opportunity to live with some quality of life. Our seniors are our treasure. They've what built this country, they've what built this city, they built this nation. They've been disrespected. We'll do whatever we can to help our seniors. Rent control, as I said before, better living conditions. I know meals has been a very big issue with our seniors, the nutrition in the meals that they're getting. We're going to improve that, make sure they're getting enough meals and enough nutrition, and just do everything we can to really take care of them. They're our treasure, and they've been ignored for far too long, and that's disgraceful.
Here's another question. With everything that's taken place, like we said, crime is on the uptick, and the media being so divisive and pitting races against races. We saw what happened under Mayor Dinkins. What will you do to make certain that New York does not become a hotbed for race riots, wars, and whatnot? This happened under Dinkins, and it has the potential of happening again with the way the media is pitting blacks against whites, Asians against whites. It's the white man is the sounding board. What are your thoughts? What do you think we should do in this great city?
Well, as I said, I was a police officer during the Dinkins administration, so I saw it firsthand how volatile the city became. I was a police officer on the front lines during the Crown Heights riots, where racism just exploded into violence. So I know what it can do. I know how dangerous it is. It's about eliminating political rhetoric. It's about not pandering to certain groups. It's about being all inclusive. This mayor has been divisive. His painting of the streets last year was, I don't want to say criminal, but it was disgraceful about how he just pit people against each other, pit communities against the police, and just exacerbated the race problem. And he's going to walk away saying that he was the most fair mayor in history with all his race-related programs. He did nothing for race relations. He did nothing for minority neighborhoods. It's about leadership. It's about bringing people together. Like I said before, it's about conversation, real conversation, not painting streets, not fancy slogans. It's about real conversation with leaders of every community, legitimate community leaders, people who want to fix things, who want solutions, not just their name in the paper, not violence. They want solutions. We can do that. Sit down with legitimate community leaders, police brass, city executives, city leaders, and talk. Face-to-face conversation, and nobody leaves the room until we get an answer.
Right. Here's another question that came from the audience. We touched on this briefly, but looking at businesses leaving New York, like they said, the stock exchange, what would you do on day one or say to keep these businesses here and let them know that we're open, we're ready to do business, and we want to work with you? What message would you have for businesses?
Like I said before, New York City is open for business. We're going to fight to fully open up our businesses. We're going to get up to 100% capacity safely. We're going to protect our businesses. Last summer, we saw some of the most expensive commercial real estate in the world on fire, being looted, and a city stand by and do absolutely nothing. A mayor do absolutely nothing to protect people's investments. We're going to do just that. We're going to protect their investments, protect our businesses, let them know that it's safe to own a business in New York City again. You don't have to put plywood up. You don't have to bring in private security with guard dogs like they did a year ago. That was disgraceful. The New York City Police Department they can protect these businesses. They can protect the city. We're going to let them do that. We're going to fight to become more business friendly, to streamline the permit process, tax incentives, tax breaks to keep our businesses here and to get our economy going again. The message is going to be loud and clear. New York City is open for business and more business friendly than it's ever been.
Here's another question from the audience. If elected, what are your thoughts on encouraging celebration of Freedom Week in our school district during the week of September 17th, Constitution Day?
Listen, I'm all for celebrating important moments in our history. I think sometimes we concentrate too much on the holiday itself instead of the meaning of the holiday. So we'll look into all those days. And for me, it's always been about, if you're going to celebrate, always keep in mind what the reason is. Why are we celebrating? Why is this a holiday? It's not just about barbecues. It's not just about being with family in the backyard. That's why I've been against September 11th being a national holiday, because I think it'll lose its meaning. It'll become more about barbecues and families and taking the day off from work than actually realizing and remembering what happened on that day. So I'm not against it. We'll talk about it and we'll look into all of it.
Okay, here's another. Your school, going back to the chancellor, what are your thoughts on critical race theory? Would you want that taught in schools?
Absolutely not. First off, I was told, or I read somewhere, that the Board of Education under Chancellor Carranza, his critical race theory and some of the programs he put our teachers through about race cost $26 million. When they talk about closing the budget gap here in New York City, that's $26 million that was absolutely wasted. We're not going to teach the critical race theory. It does nothing but divide. It does nothing but confuse our children and separate our children. No, those days are over. We're not going to push radical social agendas on our children or on our parents.
Okay, what are your thoughts on New York City wanting to legalize marijuana?
I'm against that. Marijuana for medicinal purposes, I understand the positives and understand the benefits of that. That's a completely separate issue. Recreational marijuana, no, I'm absolutely against it. You know, you walk through New York City right now and you could smell that in certain areas. It's all over the place. It's in the air. You know, I don't smoke marijuana. I've never have. So there's no reason why I should be subjected to such. There's no reason why my children are subjected to such. So I'm against it. I'm against recreational marijuana use.
Okay, here's another. You kind of answered this, but it's coming back up again. JetBlue, they're planning to move to Florida. What will you do to keep JetBlue here?
Again, it's about being business friendly. The city is not business friendly. We're losing businesses every day. JetBlue is a great company. We need to keep them here. This mayor has turned his back on business. We all know that. We need a mayor that's going to sit down with these businesses, sit down with these organizations, sit down with CEOs and leaders and say, listen, this is the greatest city in the world. This is where you need to be. What do you need to stay here? And we can sit down and have that conversation. We can negotiate on what's best for the people of the city of New York. And what's best for the people of the city of New York is to keep these great businesses here.
Well, Bill, I got to say, this has been an hour and you have been nonstop. And I really do appreciate you coming on and talking to us and sharing with us your ideas for New York City, what can happen, that New York can be great again. There is hope for New York City. And our audience has peppered a lot of questions to you. So we're going to let you go, but I don't want to let you go with just one more question. Being a police officer and what you see today, what's happening, what are your thoughts on it?
I am absolutely embarrassed, frustrated about what's happened to our law enforcement. What happened last year when they stood on those lines and were hit with bottles and bricks and shot at and run over with cars, and for this mayor to do nothing to help them, to support them, for the governor to say he stands with the protesters, and not just in New York City, all across our country. They've turned law enforcement into villains, and that's an absolute disgrace. I had the greatest pride in the world for the job I did, for the job my father did and my uncle, and for the police officers I worked with. They were my heroes. They were my peers. We've lost that in this country. We've lost the respect for our law enforcement and our military because our leaders are anti-police and anti-military. And that rhetoric has simply destroyed the morale and destroyed the effectiveness of both. So it's been a disgrace. As I said, I still have family in law enforcement. What they're going through is despicable. We need a leader in City Hall here in New York who supports the men and women of the NYPD, who supports law enforcement, who supports law-abiding citizens. And that's step one to bringing New York City back. Every member of law enforcement has my full support, whether it be the police, our correction officers who have been completely abandoned. Lost in all of this is what our correction officers are going through. They're going through hell in Rikers Island. Our school safety agents, anyone in law enforcement who sacrifices to keep the city of New York safe, they all have my 100% support and respect.
In conclusion, what would you say to those who are thinking about voting for you or looking at you as a candidate?
I would tell them that they should look into who I am, listen to what I have to say, read about what my vision is for New York City, and not get caught up in politics as usual when you vote for a name, and certainly don't vote for just a party and pull the lever straight down. Vote for the best candidate. And clearly, I am the one candidate who actually cares about New York City, who's not a career politician, who has served the city, who is a working person, who suffered through COVID with loss of income. I'm right there with everyone else. I didn't have a government paycheck coming in for the last year and sitting in a nice, comfortable office with temperature control and chilled water. That's not me. That's not who I am. I'm a New Yorker. I went to work every day. I go to work every day, and I struggle just like the rest of us. I'm not a career politician. I'm a New Yorker, and I have the right ideas. I know what it's going to take to bring the city back. I've been through it before, and we can do it again.
Well, Bill, we want to thank you for coming on, joining us, and sharing with us your ideas for New York. We wish you all the success in the world because, as I said earlier on, we definitely need a change because what we have right now is scary. The people who are running, thinking about running, I don't think they have a clue as to how to help New York and how to change things. So thank you for sharing with us your insight. Be well, God bless, and we hope to have you back on.
Thank you so much. Thank you, everybody, for having me. It's been an honor and a pleasure, and I hope to come back on as soon as possible. I'll come back.
Absolutely. And we
Great.
have your website that's up right now for individuals to look at it, to participate, get involved. Don't sit back on the sidelines talking and complaining. Hey, your vote counts. Get involved. You can reach out to Bill here on his website and on Facebook. Thank you, Bill. God bless and have a good night.
Thank you, everyone. God bless and stay safe.
Thanks, Bill.
Thanks,
Thanks.
Bill.
Okay, so there you have it, folks. Really enjoyed Bill being on with us tonight, and hopefully, New Yorkers will wake up because we need a change. We definitely need a change, and like I said, what's happening right now with De Blasio does not look good at all. What do you guys say?
Yeah, I just got back, Rob. I've been in Pittsburgh and hanging out in, small town PA also the past few months. And so the city to me is, I'm seeing it kind of with fresh eyes. And I have to say, our beloved city, it's sort of a shadow of itself. I mean, I don't want to overstate. Of course, it's still, exciting. There are still some places open, great food, and some cool people and intelligent conversations, but it's about half capacity. I would say it's about half empty. I went over to the Union Square Green Market the other day to get some apples, and instead of like 40 stalls, there were maybe 4 or 5 little stands of the farmers, and hardly anyone there. It was really striking. Of course, Midtown's almost practically a ghost town, and we see some of our young people out and about drinking and eating outdoors, and but it's and then you see a few tough elderly people walking around. God bless them. I guess people on fixed incomes who live here in the city, and some youngsters, and you do see the homeless, and I appreciated what you said. We don't want to demonize them. They're people, and they're not getting a lot of help, I guess. But when the city's emptied out like this, you see where you have some extremes kind of, and not the usual heavy foot traffic, and so you can see where it would be a more precarious environment for the elderly, for the vulnerable. It's I have to say I'm a little surprised. I was here in October, and it felt like things were more happening then, actually, than now.
Mm-hmm. Really? Wow, that's interesting. It seems that though, I will say that things have picked up considerably from this time last year. I think people are out and about. I was out and about walking around this evening rather, and I had that feeling that there's hope, but there's trepidation as well, because people don't know what's happening. And as Manny said, you have the New York Stock Exchange thinking about moving to Texas. Mm-hmm. I just hate to say it, and I didn't want to come off as I was just like all in for Bill, but de Blasio is horrible. He has just wrecked this city. And I think that last year, 2020, the whole COVID deal, that gave him the perfect opportunity to, carry out his crazy mission. I mean, he started out with the no bail, and then from there it just went downhill. And then with the introduction of COVID, it was like we're living in crazy land. And I think back when I came to the city, in the late 90s, and how the city was so prosperous and it was so just full of life and promise, and what Giuliani had done and just like turned the city around. And as I said once before on the show, I felt so comfortable walking from 53rd Street all the way downtown, even if it was midnight. I didn't feel as if though someone was going to attack me. I wouldn't dare do that now, because you just don't know. And when I hear de Blasio coming out pontificating, and a lot of these other liberal mayors and governors, and about crime is on the uptick, and that it's white men and is this. I mean, you look at the situation that happened in Atlanta. We knew that it was a white man. They didn't, I mean, as soon as it happened, and they were gleeful almost to say it was a white man. Okay. Gleeful to say they're attacking Asians. Now, since that happened, and even before that happened, the amount of Asians that have been attacked by people of color, be it Black or Hispanic, it's unbelievable. The numbers are there, but they will not report on it. So when I hear that an Asian has been attacked and they don't say the race or name, I know automatically it's a Black person or a person of color. Okay. Fast forward, look at Colorado and the killer there. The media they were on pins and needles. They could not wait to say it was a white man, and white men are bad, and white this, and white. But as soon as they found out the name of the person and that he was from Syria, they stopped. As if though they just cold turkey, let's stop reporting on it. Let's say nothing else, because we're okay with foreigners or what have you attacking America. Let's just stop about it. Let's just stop. Cold turkey, let's stop. We don't want to say his name because we don't want to give him, any press. But the other gentleman in Atlanta, they said his name as much as they could. They're giving him all the press, putting his picture out there. But the guy in Colorado, nope, don't say his name anymore. Don't say his name. Don't say where he was from. And what about those people? Was that a hate crime also? Their lives mattered. Just like the Asians in Atlanta and the two white individuals. All lives matter. Black Lives Matter, in my humble opinion, is a radical, misguided group. On their website, before they took it down, their mission statement was completely the opposite of what Americans stand for and Blacks stand for. They could care less about the institution of the family. And as far as the Black man being in that institution, they could have cared less. So putting Black Lives Matter on the street, as Bill Pepitone said, was merely political. They were trying to make people angry. And you know what? You succeeded. And shame on you, because we're all Americans, as Barack Obama once said as a senator. There's no blue Americans, there's no red Americans. It's only United States of America. It's so sad that he has forgotten that. It is so sad that he cannot come out and stand up and say, put the brakes on this, because remember, we're all Americans. I wonder if he ever ponders those words or even think about what he said in 2004, that we're all Americans. The only thing he's doing now, it seems, is pushing consistently hate, division. Shame on you. Because I would like to think that as a 44th president, who was elected not once but 2 terms, you could come out on a stage and say, let's stop this, because there's no red Americans, there's no blue Americans, there's only United States of America. As sad as it is, he can't and he won't.
Listen, look, if you look at kind of what's happening to New York, right? I think the best way to describe it would be to look at what happened to the school's chancellor, Carranza. He was an utter complete failure. He was some guy who came from, I think, Houston, and he was like a superintendent or something in Houston, and he was like the third choice. I think the first two declined, and it was interesting. I think de Blasio put out a press release that he was hiring one person, and then the guy got pissed off and denied that he took the job. But this guy was so divisive, and all he cared about, that is 1.1 million students in New York City public schools, which is the largest in the United States, over 100,000 teachers, pretty big system that the chancellor is responsible for. All he cared about was going after specialized high schools. There's Brooklyn Tech, Bronx High School of Science, and Stuyvesant, which are very elite schools. I went to an elite school in New York called Regis. It's a Jesuit school. I got a scholarship there. I took a test. My family had no money. I got in. I got accepted. Changed my life. It was a Catholic school, a Jesuit school. These schools are non-religious because they're city schools, but they're elite schools predicated on excellence and talented students, gifted and talented students. He felt his core mission was that the gifted and talented schools were not representing New York fully in terms of the number of minority students that were attending these gifted and talented schools. Now, let me tell you, these gifted and talented schools are very difficult to get into. You get into Stuyvesant, for example, you're pretty much punching a ticket to go to MIT or Bronx High School of Science or Brooklyn Tech, without a doubt. Odds-on favorite, 80%. You get through Stuyvesant, you're going to MIT, you're going to Harvard, you're going to Stanford. Easy, no problem. This chancellor was so obsessed with these specialized high schools. You have to take a test called the SHSAT. So the SAT, when you go from high school to college, you take this specialized high school from grammar school or middle school into high school. But it's so competitive. You have to do really well on the test, and then they interview you. And I took the test when I was going to high school, and I got into those schools as well, but I decided to go to Regis. And the Dr. Fauci went to Regis, by the way, so don't hold it against me. He's a little older than me, or a lot older than me.
Okay.
But these schools are tremendous. And what he wanted to do was get rid of the SHSAT. So, if you're from a poor family and you're in New York and you really bust your ass and you study and you have good grades at grammar school and middle school and you get into Stuyvesant, you could get a job to provide for your family. I mean, this is a serious thing. He wanted to take that right away from children because he felt that these schools weren't representative. Well, these schools are representative based upon passing a test, based upon academic rigor, based upon performance. It's like athletics. I mean, athletics isn't fair, right? I can't dunk. I used to touch the rim when I was younger, but I mean, should I sue the NBA and say lower the rim so guys like me can play? I mean, when you have excellence, just the word excellence is exclusive. Excellence means not everyone. Excellence means some people. And all Carranza did, and I've seen him speak, he spoke at my law school, and it was the day after he got attacked by these parents in Queens who were really upset at him and in the city. And a lot of people in the city are great, and they want their kids to do well. They want their kids to have an open view of the world. And all he was doing was trying to expose children to being divisive and creating divisions within our society, which is already divided, as you mentioned. And he spoke at my law school, and he said, well, I'm glad I'm here amongst friends. And, he didn't know I was there, obviously. I didn't attack him or anything like that. I said something to him on the way out, kind of nicely. But he had an agenda, and his agenda was being the mouthpiece for Bill de Blasio. See, Bill de Blasio is the mayor, and the school's chancellor reports to the mayor. That only happened under Bloomberg. That didn't happen in Giuliani. Bloomberg did that. He lobbied with Albany to give mayoral control of the schools. But de Blasio has this radical idea that, Stuyvesant is a terrible place. And we should just dilute the talent pool at Stuyvesant to make it more equitable. It would no longer be an excellent school. It would be like every other school. And a beautiful thing happened. New York rejected him. He resigned the other day. He's out of here. And now we have another schools chancellor. And de Blasio at a press conference the other day, it was one of my favorite Bill de Blasio moments that I waited for in about 8 years. Reporter asked him, what about, the specialized high schools? And he said, unfortunately, his administration has not been successful. Hopefully the next mayor will take it up. And I videoed it and I tweeted it. I was so happy that the people in New York had the guts to stand up and say, we don't want to take away the opportunity for some kid, maybe from a poor community, maybe some kid, whose family, members work at night, and these kids are really smart and they study a lot, and they get into Stuyvesant and they're, it's like Willy Wonka. They won the golden ticket, and they could provide for their family and take care of their family. And that's what happened in New York. That's what Bill de Blasio did, is he created this false sense of separation and divisiveness, and that in his mind, things should have been different, and things should be different. What they should be like, I don't know. I don't think he knows. He was just thinking, and his attitude is, New York just shouldn't be the way it is because it's wrong. And again, like we were talking about with Bill Pepitone, having 10% at a Yankees game without any scientific proof saying that you can't have 11% is complete bullshit. It's just make believe. So too is Bill de Blasio's philosophy of a lack of equity in the city, especially in the schools. It's make believe. Show me the stats that say it should be this as opposed to what it is. Things are the way they are. Can things get better? Yes. Should people be given more opportunity? Yes. But when you get into arguments that there's a lack of equity, you got to prove to me explicitly, prima facie, it's got to be obvious that there's some type of discriminatory intent. There's some reasons that people are being held back. Passing a test to get into Stuyvesant is not that. That just means that test is too damn hard. That means that you can't dunk at that rim. Then you can't play an NBA. Sorry. That's what it is. You can't dilute talent and gifted and talented programs in the pursuit of equity. And that's Bill de Blasio in a microcosm. And that's what happened to New York, where people came to New York, as Heather mentioned, striving for excellence. People wanted to work at Goldman Sachs. People were striving for excellence. And people competed on the merits, competed based upon skills. But de Blasio took that spirit energy away, because if you competed, it was wrong. If you were competing, you had an advantage over someone else because of the school you went to or how you were raised, which is complete bullshit as well. It doesn't mean that people can't work hard or just as hard. The most successful people in society, in the world, didn't come from incredible backgrounds. So that whole philosophy is failed. That whole ideology has failed. He will go down in history as the worst mayor in the history of New York City, maybe one of the worst mayors in the country, in the history of the United States, outside of Marion Barry. I don't even think Marion Barry was so bad. He had a crack addiction. I don't know what Bill de Blasio's excuse is. Just this perverted, distorted sense that things are not right without justifying what things should be. It's always easy to say, this isn't right, Rob. But if I'm going to say that, I got to follow up with what is right or what's wrong. It's easy just to say this isn't right. And that's all he did. But he crushed the spirit of the city, and he did a good job. He did a real good job doing that. And it's tragic. And I hope that New York City is like a heavyweight champion. They always have a fighter's chance, always have a puncher's chance that, one punch knockout. I think de Blasio is worse than Lightfoot. He's worse than the mayor of Chicago. He absolutely is, because New York City used to be an indestructible city. And I guess he's a genius in a way, because he figured out how to destroy New York City. So I'll give him credit for that. He did what other mayors couldn't do, which was destroy New York City. So look, I hope I'm wrong. I hope everything I said is not true. I hope everything I said doesn't come true. But I don't like to be wrong. I'm usually not wrong, and I hope I'm wrong about New York City. I hope the city comes back for all of our sakes, for the sake of the people that I care about, for my family. But at the end of the day, I'm looking at reality. I'm facing reality here, and to shut down business, expecting business to just reopen when there's plywood, everything's boarded up throughout the city. What are you going to do if you open a business? Get a hammer and just like take the plywood off, and then your staff that you employed 8 months ago, they're working other places. How are you going to hire them back? So it's just kind of tragic. But the social engineering is what's completely perverted and distorted about the city. This kind of outcome determinativeness, looking at the outcome and saying, oh, this is why Stuyvesant discriminates, because look at the number of minority students that go to Stuyvesant, without looking at the fact that it's really hard to get into Stuyvesant, period, full stop. It's not meant for everybody to apply. It's meant for kids who could pass the test, first of all, and it's hard to pass the test. It is like an elite athlete. And we seem to be okay with athletics. We seem to accept differences in athletics, and we seem to accept the fact that some people are better than others and excel at being athletic. It's not discriminatory that someone is not as good as someone else, but yet in terms of intelligence, it's discriminatory. It makes no sense to me. I mean, your mind, maybe some people excel in athletics and could run faster than other people, hit a ball farther. Maybe some people have a smarter, level of, intelligence, or better in math. It's no different than athletics. So why are we okay with athletics in terms of competition, and in terms of the fact that people who can't compete are left out? We don't even think about that, right? If you won a silver medal, you lost, right? We only look at those who win the gold medal. But yet when it comes to academics, it's like, oh, this isn't fair, this isn't right. It's like, what? Completely wrong. And I'm sorry I'm being long-winded, but that's what happened in New York City. Carranza is a perfect example. The people in New York, thank you. We stood up to him and we ousted him, and he resigned in embarrassment. And Bill de Blasio didn't get away with it, but he did in terms of ruining the excellent, talented, gifted schools. But de Blasio did a good job at really destroying the city.
No, Manny, like you said, it might have been long-winded, but it was well said, because I think you captured what has happened. You captured part of de Blasio's term here as mayor. And I've oftentimes said, I can't believe how people voted for him. And now you have some of the people that voted for him are up in arms saying, oh my God, he's ruining the city. But he told you he was going to do this when he was elected not once, but twice. So, you have no one to blame but yourself. The same thing with Andrew Cuomo. No one to blame but yourself. You're to blame for the city being ruined the way it is, because you guys are constantly supporting these knuckleheads. Even look at Cuomo. We have a majority of New Yorkers saying, oh, let him stay. Let him stay. No, don't let him stay. Now, granted, he should have his day in court. But as far as a sexual harassment deal, okay, let him stay. There's a possibility that some of these women, were flirting around with him. We don't know. I don't know, and I don't care. But I am concerned with the idea that 15,000 elderly people were killed because under his direction. And I think because of that, he should resign. Because of that, he should be kicked out. Look at Michigan, I think, or like there's not Michigan, but Missouri. The governor of Missouri stepped down the other day because of having an affair. He stepped down. He said that he didn't want to be a distraction for governing the city or the state, and he's Republican. Now we know that Cuomo is an arrogant SOB. He's not going anywhere. Can you blame him? Why not ride it out? Because they're dealing with sexual harassment. It's a he said, she said.
He's got 8 women. He's got 8 women now.
8 women.
8 women.
Yeah.
What is it? What do we need? 10? What's the magic number?
Does anyone else think it's fishy and intriguing that this nursing home horror is not what is likely to sink Cuomo? I mean, this stuff about the women and the strip poker and all that, I'm not saying it's good if it's true. I'm just saying this is not life and death. And it just seems like this may be I don't know. I just am curious as to your thoughts as to whether the other Democrats, maybe they want him to go down for this stuff so that the nursing home debacle won't be investigated. I mean, maybe he'll take many others down with him if the bigger set of issues is really,
Right.
exposed.
But I think the deal with the sexual harassment, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to be impartial. Just listening to the women, I do believe what they're saying happened. But at the same time, he's coming across extremely cocky. And how this is being reported would lead me to believe that if it took place, or let's say it took place, when it took place, and hear me out, please, these were willing participants to a degree because they're looking at, hey, my career, I can go up a ladder or I can go down. We're just flirting. He's flirting and I'm flirting. But then the moment, as always the case, someone says, oh, I didn't like that. No, I'm going to report it. The other women, hey, I'm going to report this also. I do believe that when it did happen, they probably said, oh, I don't know about that. Can you believe he flirted with me? You think of your regular day when you're in an office, corporate office. I've heard many times women would say, oh, this guy flirted with me and I flirted back. Well, he shouldn't have done that because he's your supervisor. Oh, so what? And they thought nothing of it. But then later on, hey, there's me too. I'm mad. I didn't get to where I wanted to go. So now I can make a complaint. Even if I participated in this, I can now say, hey, it wasn't right. And it wasn't right because they were the subordinate. So he probably knows this and is probably thinking to himself, I did nothing wrong. Yes, I got up in your face. Yes, I called you darling. Yes, I did this, but I did nothing wrong. So he would rather argue that and have that out there as opposed to the nursing home deaths where he knows he would sink. Because he's looking at time if they're able to prove that he lied and he covered up. That's just my take on it.
See, I think the nursing home situation, there's investigations being conducted by the Justice Department and the FBI. So, there's really not much he could do to cover that up at this point, right? I mean, they've subpoenaed records and they're interviewing people. I think what's interesting about the sexual harassment allegations is essentially that because he's a Democrat, he's getting away with it. I mean, he, again, was very critical of Trump. Now, again, if these allegations were levied towards Trump, what would Andrew Cuomo say? He's not holding himself to his own standards, which I think is a crock of shit.
Well, the Democrats never do.
Right. Well, and that's the issue that I have with it is, I mean, we don't know. But the point is, he's a governor of New York, and I don't expect this behavior from the governor of New York. I don't expect the governor of New York to say the stuff he said. I think it's inappropriate. If it was my daughter, I would be mortified. I would never say such things to people in that setting. The guy's the governor of New York, and he kind of, lays his foundation that, he is very critical of that behavior. But he's so critical of that behavior, except but for if he commits that behavior. That's the hypocrisy of this whole thing. That's why he should be called out. He's the biggest hypocrite. Okay, he should be called out, and all the people, Kirsten Gillibrand and all these other people, those are the ones, AOC, those are the ones who need to be called out. Because if anybody else did this, and Trump is a great example, say it was Ted Cruz, doesn't it be Trump? He'd be dead. He'd have to resign. I mean, look at Tom Reed. I mean, Tom Reed has been in Congress for New York's representing upstate New York for many terms, right? He announced for 5 minutes, literally, that he was forming an exploratory committee to run for governor, right? Lee Zeldin, people are thinking about running against Cuomo next year because they think he's soft. And a woman came out with allegations of sexual harassment against Tom, and Tom announced that he's not running for re-election in 2022. He admitted it, and that's it. So, he's not challenging it. He's not fighting it. Cuomo, I feel, is not taking this seriously because he knows we don't have divided government in New York in terms of we don't have Republicans in the Senate, New York State Senate, and the Assembly. So, even the Democrats are doing this impeachment, they're slow walking it. It's going to take months. This thing's not going to happen until the end of the year, and maybe something else will come out between now and then. So I think he's going to survive, and I think it's disgraceful that he's allowed to get away with. He would, be the first person to say this person should resign, and no one's challenging him except De Blasio, because there's bad blood between him and De Blasio. But and maybe that's the only thing I agree with De Blasio on. But at the end of the day, I think Cuomo will get through this.
Right. I just to make the record correct, I was referring to the Missouri governor who resigned, Eric Grittens, and that was in 2018 when he came under scrutiny for having an affair. He resigned at that point. So fast forward today, they're looking at Cuomo, who is refusing, as he told a supporter, "I'm not going anywhere, darling." The man who kisses men and women, he's not going anywhere. So like you said, Manny, he will probably survive this. I don't think he's going to step down. I don't care if there are 20 women. He's not going anywhere unless Joe Biden says it's time to go. And even with that, I don't think he would go. Only if
Joe Biden is just stumbling up flights of stairs.
Only if the issue with the nursing homes, if they start pressuring him on that, that's would he step down. But other than that, no, he's in this for the long haul. He's protected, and I think they know he is. Like you said, they're going to slow walk this impeachment to make people think that they're serious about it. He probably knows it. I was thinking just early today, I'm like, I wouldn't at all be surprised if some of the staffers and a lot of these senators, like Schumer's staffers or somewhat low level, said, "Hey, Cuomo, this has got to happen. He's got to talk out against it so that people will think that he's being serious. But just know, we want you to stay put." So why wouldn't he? I wouldn't at all be surprised.
You think the Biden administration, Justice Department, Merrick Garland, and Christopher Wray is going to take action against Andrew Cuomo?
Christopher Wray. No, absolutely not. But Merrick Garland, when I heard him speak, I'm thinking, are you serious? This is a guy you guys wanted on the Supreme Court? Not that the other people that we put up there are, but man, this guy is weak.
He's a judge. He's not a prosecutor. You watch judges in the courtroom. I know I do.
God.
Right? I mean, judges instruct the jury or judges handle a case, and the lawyers put on the case or the prosecution. But, he's the attorney general. I mean, so Andrew Cuomo is going to survive this, and it's tragic. It's tragic for the women that he's abused, and clearly tragic for the families of the people that died. But at the end of the day, it's the hypocrisy of Biden, and the hypocrisy of Kamala Harris. Did you guys see now that it was on, I think it was on Tucker Carlson or Hannity tonight, that the White House wants to be referred to as the Biden-Harris administration on all of their communications. And they reached out to the White House to confirm that and get some information on that, and they didn't give me the information yet. But it's Biden/Harris administration.
Do you guys think he's going to last? Do you think he'll last long, Biden?
Oh my Lord! That steps situation. I mean, he really is. He's like a little shell at this point.
And the media isn't saying anything about it. He hasn't addressed.
It was the wind, guys. Come on, it was the wind.
Yeah. I mean, that to me, that's even embarrassing. That the wind took him down. Oh my gosh!
Well, somebody I was speaking with, I can't believe all those people voted for Biden, and the truth is they didn't. Without even getting into whether there was fraud or not. I mean, they voted against Trump. This country was so whipped up, so inculcated. I've never seen anything in my lifetime like the hatred of this man, of Trump. I mean, without even getting into my own views about it, I think that Biden could have essentially been anybody they put up there. And in a sense, they chose someone who was the most kind of, he's not a blank slate because he has a history and all that, but he's weak. And that was why they chose him, because he could be dominated by the hard left. And so what scares me is, first of all, I hope he makes it for his own sake, but if something happens to him, it's going to be the hard left running the country, which they probably already are. But
Right. And look at China and Russia. I mean, that's the thing that bothers me, is that they see the weakness and they're ready. I mean, they are willing, ready, and capable to push back. The Secretary of State, Blinken, or whatever he calls himself, he's weak. All these people are weak, and the rest of the world, our enemies, see it. They smell blood in the water, while the Democrats are busy with their little social experiments with sports and everything else, racism and all this other stuff. These other countries are like, huh, okay, you busy yourselves with that, and we'll keep reminding you, as China did so eloquently on Friday, you guys just deal with Black Lives Matter and let us take care of everything else. They are willing, ready, and able. And as one of our guests said on Sunday, Michael Johns, is that, the Biden administration, they are completely aware as to what's happening with China. They know what China wants. And they could care less, because they're just going to keep trying to move their little socialist agenda until it's all over. And they have the votes to do it. Unless some of the Democrats say, no, we can't go down this road. If they are all able to corral those senators and representatives, we're toast. And I hate to say it, but we're toast. And there's nothing we could do about it. Nothing at all, nothing in the courts. We just have to acquiesce, call uncle, and say, okay, let's see what happens in 2022, 2024. But if they wanted to, they could steamroll right over us if all the Democrats are on the same page. And that is a scary thought. And I don't think people realize that they control this and they can do whatever the heck they want. And they're doing it little by little. Look at Biden. Oh, I'm getting ready to introduce another stimulus bill, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that, and I'm going to have a press conference, and give me your questions, and I want to know so I can memorize it. It's scary. Guys, we're at the bottom of the hour. I don't have anything else unless you care to, give commentary. Feel free.
Yeah, just one thing quick I want to mention. Biden said the dumbest thing that I've ever heard a president say when he called Putin a killer. And he's missing a basic tenet of foreign policy: is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. So we're at war with China. We still haven't come to terms of what happened with COVID and how it was spread, and if it was manufactured and man-made and the whole thing. And he's pissing off Russia, and we're really at war with China. Mm-hmm. You have to have Russia be your ally. The enemy of my enemy is my friend. So when he said that, I'm like, this guy is setting us up for some really, really dangerous situations. Like, don't forget, today's the 23rd of March. He got sworn in on January 20th. January to February is a month. February to March is 2 months. In 2 months, we have the worst border crisis in many, many years. Kids in cages. The media is not allowed. Lack of transparency. It's supposed to be the most transparent government in history. Bullshit. So, look, I think we're going to have a lot to talk about in the future. I'll leave it at that.
Absolutely. Heather, closing statement?
Well, just that I really hope that this country comes to its senses. I think its romance with crazy hard leftist ideas has begun to cost us all terribly. But from what I can hear and see back in the city, people are still in deep denial, and they are brainwashed and enchanted by a lot of leftist cant that is not logical. And I think we're in for what did Betty Davis say? A bumpy ride.
A bumpy ride. Hold on, it's going to be a bumpy ride. Yeah. Andrew?
Crazy hard leftist ideas.
Yeah. Thank you so much to Bill for joining us tonight. It was a pleasure to hear from him. Best of luck to him running for mayor of New York City. And Rob and I have some big changes to the show coming up soon. We will keep you guys posted on that. And a little bit of a change of format, so keep an eye on that. And Thursday we will be back with a chef from New York City and a restaurant owner from California to talk about the lockdowns and how they have affected their business. So please join us Thursday night at 10 Eastern, 9 Central, 7 in the West.
Absolutely. So thank you all for joining us. It was a great show. We will be back on again, as Andrew said, on Thursday. Until then, be safe. God bless. And as always, let's stay in the fight. Thank you. Good night.